Hey everybody, this is Perch, and there was a question that came my way, and I think it's a pretty simple one, but there's some little bit of nuance to it, and it was: do the writers of the comic get to select the covers? How much influence does the writer of the comic have for the cover? And there's not a one answer, but the most common answer is very little. Generally speaking, the covers are commissioned often by editorial. They can come from other places. There can be a lot of things that go into selecting that cover, and generally speaking, the writer doesn't have a lot of input on it. Now, that said, the writer can sometimes work with the artist if the artist of the interior is also the artist on the cover. They can sometimes play parts of the story out as the cover that's been commissioned. The writer definitely has a say in that. But more often than not, the problem is I don't know if there's a solid, reliable monthly answer to give to that. What I can say with complete authority is that variant covers have nothing to do with the writer. I'm sure there's an exception out there somewhere, but the variant covers are completely driven from editorial, and the main cover often is as well. But that's where it does start to break down a little bit, and I think you could pull up a million examples of where things are different. And it also depends a little bit on who you are. If you're Scott Snyder, you're working with Greg Capullo on metal, then you as a writer probably has a little bit more input and say into the cover. But if you're Greg Capullo, you probably also have a lot of just freedom to do whatever you want with the cover yourself. So there's a lot of distinction here in general. But often the cover is completely outside of the story that's being told. Now that gets to the crux of maybe what most of this video is about, which is, why is that? Isn't the cover supposed to be very indicative of what's going on in the comic? Isn't the cover kind of the front face, the way to sell that comic? And wouldn't you want these things, nicely linked? Wouldn't you want the cover to really be connected with what's going on in the comic? And the answer is, well, I mean, as a fan and as a customer, yes, but as a publisher, for whatever reason, that's really diverged. Those two worlds don't really meet as much anymore, to the point that it's very common that you see, basically the writer confused or surprised by covers that are coming up. It's funny because I feel like the comic industry in general is transforming quite a lot right now. And it feels like a lot of things that I believed were true or that, always made sense to me, and I think still makes sense to me as a shop owner, as somebody who sells comics. The cover, oftentimes I watch customer behavior, and this is what I see most commonly. People, they will grab their pull box if they have one. Otherwise, they'll go to the stands. They're looking at kind of logos, and they're looking at artists they recognize. And almost always, when the cover is very abstracted, like if you have a really awesome Alex Ross style cover, but it's just kind of a generic image of, say, Captain America jumping over a hedge or something, it really doesn't cause people to take note anymore. It hasn't for a few years now. Now, if Captain America is jumping over this hedge and the Red Skull is like sneaking up behind the hedge, like shaking his fist, then people are like, "Oh, the Red Skull must be in this comic." That I'm now interested because I recognize that villain. I think you're seeing some of that right now with Alex Ross on the Iron Man covers, and you're seeing pictures of Iron Man, but he's fighting Korvac, and like, I recognize Korvac. I haven't seen him in a while, and this must be a big deal. Okay, I will buy this because I see Korvac there. And then definitely the nice art definitely sells it. But if it's clear in some way that the cover artist is the same as the interior, like maybe a cover artist that you don't see very often, or maybe a good example would be Patrick Gleason has done some Spider-Man comic covers that are beautiful. They look really distinctive. They really pop on the stands. And knowing that he's also the interior artist is a big deal. I think Chris Bacalo, for whatever reason, there's this perception that is maybe not completely accurate, that Chris Bacalo, when he does covers, he's typically doing the interior as well. I'm not sure why people have that view, but they do. And so if he's on a cover, it tends to draw a little bit more interest. Art Adams always draws interest, even though everybody is 100% aware he's not going to be on the inside. J. Scott Campbell is another one that draws interest. But almost always, if you have a cover that really fits what's going on within the comic, in the shop, it's more successful. It's like if Spider-Man's fighting, it's very, very dynamic image of Spider-Man fighting the Green Goblin on the cover, and the comic, yes, indeed, is Spider-Man fighting the Green Goblin, then it works out and it tends to get more attention as opposed to a more generic cover, even if the generic cover is drawn by a very well-known superstar kind of artist. Uh, but for whatever reason, I don't think what I just described to you is what publishers think is happening. Because publishers increasingly view the cover as kind of a gallery, a showcase kind of thing, and that it's really not important to have the cover connect to the interior of the book. And I don't know why. Now, granted, part of how covers get made often is they're commissioned at a different time, and so you may not fully know what the plot of the book is when the cover is commissioned. So there's a lot of little aspects here that, some of it is just the two are being done on separate tracks and they come together at the last minute, and that's how you get your comic. But publishers, I've heard this now from several editors. I've seen this in interviews that have been given with comic publishers saying that the comic cover is intended to sell the comic and it's intended to pop it off the shelves by being very striking, very engaging, whatever it happens to be, but that it doesn't need to reflect what's going on inside the comic. And I'll be honest, all the sales data I have and I see point to the opposite. That the cover, the more separated the cover gets from what is actually inside the pages of the book, the more risky it is that the comic will sell. Now, I'm not saying you have like an '80s style cover where there's some kind of scene clearly from inside the comic, and the character's like, "Gasp! I never thought it would be you," and then it's like the big reveal inside. I'm not saying go that far. I'm saying you link the two together. I do strongly believe, and I'm coming more and more firm on this belief. And again, I'm viewing this from sales, that when you have a comic that the interior artist and the cover artist are the same, it tends to hold up and have more credibility. I think things bounce around a lot more when you fail to do that. It's funny because in the 80s and even the early 90s, that was considered almost a sin by a lot of customers. This idea that the cover artist was different from the interior. They felt like the publisher was trying to trick them somehow, and that it was a cheat. And oftentimes it was a case of like, John Byrne is doing West Coast Avengers and he's doing the interiors and he's doing the covers. And at some point he stops doing the interiors, but he still has a couple covers that he does. And I remember just very angry readers who are like, "You tricked me. You took John Byrne off the book, but you kept him doing the cover. I got home, opened it up. This is somebody else." Very angry. And somewhere around, in the 2000s, and especially the last 10 years, it feels like that logic has kind of gone out the window. Publishers just don't care anymore. They view that, the interior artist can be completely different and everybody expects that. And, I'll get pushback sometimes when I say, "Hey, I think this is a problem." I'll get pushback saying all the customers realize this is what we do. This is normal. This is what people expect. It's like, maybe it's what people expect, but it's certainly not what people like. I think, and keep in mind, everybody likes Alex Ross. He makes amazing covers, and his art kicks ass. And if you could have Alex Ross actually doing the interior of the comic, that'd be wonderful. If you have Art Adams doing the interior, J. Scott Campbell, I mean, everybody would want that. But and everybody loves that art. They love it as a poster and a pinup, and looks great, and all that stuff is wonderful. Uh, but if they had the choice of the interior artist or the cover art, and being the same or different, 9 times out of 10 people are going to pick that it's the same creator, that it's the same, even if they love that art. I think a lot of people kind of view switching the artist around as something that is maybe more for variants, that hey, you're buying a variant cover, so then go nuts, put whoever you want on that thing. It doesn't, it no longer matters. But for the primary cover, keeping them consistent is actually kind of a big deal. But again, this is what I hear in the shop. This is what this is just what I've observed from a decade or more of sales, kind of consistently, of when things really started to change about 10 years ago. And this is what I see in retailer groups. But this is one of those areas where there seems to be a very deep divide between retailers and the publishers, because the publishers are just not in agreement at all on this topic. And I'm not sure how it got out of sync. I somewhere along the line, things split, but I'm not sure where. So let me ask you, the person listening to this, what do you like? First off, do you like the cover artist being the same as the interior artist? Do you feel it's a bit of a con when you don't get that? Does it matter? Would you prefer to see a really like high profile artist like Art Adams on every comic, even though none of the interiors are by Art Adams? Like, does this matter to you? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Follow me on social media. Send me an email. Thanks for listening.